Will work. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see, I suppose.
We're in your capable hands.
Thank you. Blimey. Don't know about that. Right, we should be going out on Facebook and on YouTube, and more importantly, on dailychaos.news /show. So that is the place, good people, to come and have a chat. Tell us what your thoughts are regarding Brexit. Stroke Brino. What's it going to be? Place your bets. Coming up in just a few minutes' time with Jon Roads, who's popping in.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, not at all, John. Wonderful. God bless you, mate. So look, if you're watching an archive version, you might want to fast forward just a few minutes to the top of the show, which is going to be in about 5 minutes' time. And if you are watching live, then God bless you. Give us a shout. Tell us what your thoughts are. Tell us what you think is going to happen with this whole Brexit thing. All right. Okay. Coming up. Do. Yeah. Oh, blimey. 2 minutes. 2 minutes, people. Oh, blimey. Oh, you know what? There's a queue. There's a queue. There's got to be a queue. Right, better start this thing. Yeah. Hey, folks. Good evening. Good people.
Good evening.
Hey, John.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Daily Chaos.
Thanks for having me on.
Hold on, John.
Excuse me,
I know you can't hear this. We got a theme tune going on. Yeah, Daily Chaos. Ordo I'm KO. Know what I mean? Yeah. And now, trust issues.
Yes, we have them. We should have
Will
them.
it? Hold on, John. Will it be Brexit or Brino?
I'm going to guess Brexit.
Hold on, John. Hold on, for goodness sake, I'm doing my intro, mate. I know you can't hear it. It is chaos. I've got Brexiteer, committed Brexiteer, Jon Roads, here now to tell us his thoughts on why he's confident for Brexit. I'm going to be putting in the pessimistic view, which is, no, I don't know. You know what? Look at the history. And I want to hear what you got to say about this. What is it going to be? Are we going to get Brexit or is it going to be Brino? We're not even allowed to use the word Brexit anymore, according to the PM. He reckons he delivered Brexit back in January. No, I can't see any of it. Not yet. We're still in the CM, the SM, the ECJ. No. But a lot of you disagree and say, yeah, it's all go, it's happening, end of the year, we got it. I hope you're right. We'll see. But I kind of think we got to keep talking about this, keep the government, know that we're thinking, we're talking, we're watching, we're active. Right, okay, good. Jon Roads, God bless you, sir, for coming in to have a bit of a chat. Very much appreciate that. if folks could let us know, please, in the comments, if you can hear this, if you can hear the audio. Could you actually hear the theme tune just now? Let me know, because I don't know. I've been concentrating on other things, and the tech might have gone a pot over the course of the weekend. I have no idea. But yeah, right. William Plonk says, Ollie, music is a bit iffy. Mixing not up to scratch. And then says that's better. Okay, all right. So maybe something's working. Who knows? Jon Roads, good evening, sir. You, I understand, are a regular, committed Brexiteer. What does Brexit mean to you, please? And I take it you're a British citizen, so therefore
I am indeed
qualified.
a British citizen. Brexit to me, hard Brexit, fully out, fully sovereign, no room for the European Court of Justice, no regulatory alignment, our own territorial fishing waters, our own say over everything. As far as I'm concerned, the key thing about Brexit is that we have the ability to change any rules that we live under and vote out anyone involved in making those rules over us. If we don't
that
have
sounds
that
good.
in
That
full,
sounds great. So, but we haven't got that yet, have we? Well, you and I, let's bit of background here. We had a bit of a tiff last week. Very, very polite tiff. More so from John than from me, I have to say. Quite passionate about this. But you say we've got it and that it's happening, yeah? Or do you agree that it's on the way or should be on the way, but the fat lady ain't sung yet?
Fat lady definitely ain't sung yet. I mean, I think that the terms of our tiff were specifically concerning whether Brexit would be reversed if Biden were to win the US election. Now, leaving aside whether we think it's likely for Biden to win the election or whether or not that's a good or absolutely catastrophic, disastrous thing for him to win the election.
Yep.
My point is that I do not see any evidence of backsliding on Brexit from the government at the moment. I mean, Brexit technically has happened. We are out. We left on the 31st of January. Now,
No. That isn't Brexit. Hold on. A couple of things there. First of all, I mooted. I put up a post somewhere or other that basically we were. I didn't think we would get Brexit at all. If, or at least it would be a very watered down Brino if, God forbid, Biden won the presidency. Now, I'm talking from the point of view of the UK here, because if Biden took the presidency, we would be, as Obama said, back at the back of the trade queue, in terms of that trade deal. And if we don't have that leverage over the EU, then the Tories, who historically have, for example, covered up the FCO 30-1048, which admitted decades ago that we would lose all of our sovereignty right about now, for example, that had depraved MPs vote with the government under threat of blackmail, according to Tim Fortescue, Ted Heath's whip, colleague to Ken Clarke. This party has a history. Elected, when we said in that referendum, guess what? We want Brexit. They gave us Theresa May, committed Remainer as Prime Minister. That is the history of the Tory party in a nutshell, so far as our relationship with the EU is concerned. So that's the Biden thing, and the trade thing. Now, John, you do you not agree that if Biden does become the president, that our chances of getting a trade deal are sorely diminished in the time frame that we really need to be able to hold the EU's feet to the fire in terms of getting some kind of an amenable relationship with them going forward, i.e. a Canada-type trade deal?
Well, personally, I'm after a more of an Australian style anyway. I think cut the ties with the EU, leave on WTO rules, have a series of sector-by-sector deals as and when appropriate, as it suits us, in the same way that the same relationship that Australia has with the EU. Now, I mean, regarding Biden, I mean, Obama's back of the queue statement was made in the run-up to the referendum. So there was a clear bit of political maneuvering going on there. There was something to play for. He clearly felt that he could influence the vote of the British people with that statement. That simply isn't the case anymore. There is no, it can't be worked in that same way. We voted against the EU and we voted against his statement anyway. We took it on the chin. So I think a certain amount of realpolitik will come in where it's in the USA's interest to have a good trade deal with us, same as it is for us.
Yeah, well, because you're underestimating the position of the Democrats, if you like. I mean, really the globalists from whatever party. I mean, Trump is clearly an Anglophile, and he's against the globalist doctrine. He's actually said he wants to see an end to globalism, in fact, as we know it these days throughout the world, and to come back to a more national politics, where, for example, in his case, it's America first. But with the globalists, and Biden is absolutely a globalist, all the Democrats are globalists, pretty much all the Republicans are globalists as well. Their primary interest is not to have a good relationship with the UK. It's to be a global player on the road to global government as admitted by the United Nations. Therefore, if anybody who is not more nationalist-minded gains power, surely they will use the UK as a pawn to try to prop up the EU, which is, as admitted by Jacques Delors all those decades ago, and subsequently by pretty much everybody who has been, for example, a president of the EU or whatever capacity, a cornerstone of future global government.
I mean, I think there's definitely a risk there that, as you say, the ideological commitment between globalists of whatever nationality, whether the US or Europe,
they don't care
will
about
cause them to
nationality
unite against us. And it might be, the worst case scenario, if under, let's hope it doesn't happen, but if under a Democrat presidency and Congress, some kind of trade deal with the USA is tied to us accepting the conditions of a trade deal with the EU. And that would certainly be very, very bad for us. But the thing, I mean, Biden won't become the president until next year anyway. Even if he wins this year, he will be president-elect until January. So he won't necessarily have that power anyway. It might be that we can actually conclude a trade deal with Trump before then anyway. So this might all be a moot point. I don't know how quickly that's going to take to get signed, but both the UK and the USA seem to be saying that can be driven through pretty quick. The same's happening with Australia. And I mean, I think the risk of accepting a Brino deal remains high, but the risk of any kind of Brexit not happening or being reversed by this government, I just don't think it exists. I think we are out. Our main priority now has to be making sure we get the right kind of deal, or rather, key point, avoiding the wrong kind of deal. We do not want to deal with any of these conditions attached.
I've just seen over on dailychaos.news that the wrong vid was playing on dailychaos.news/show. Apparently it's the right video now, but right. We were playing last week's. I don't know. It's still, for me, is playing the wrong video. Look, you know what? I need to get to the bottom of that. I do apologize for everybody that's at dailychaos.news/show. The show you should be watching with me and Jon Roads is Trust Issues, discussing Brexit versus Brino and what we can expect, and not Poverty Pandemic or whatever else is showing on there. RKBA or whatever, that should not be. Charlotte says it's the right video now on there, so I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on there, to be honest with you. We're going out on youtube.com/dailychaos, on facebook.com/dailychaosnews, And if my website catches up, dailychaos.news /show. But I will have a pop around these different places and see what people have got to say in the comments and what have you. Swanee says, Lush, ain't they been watching loads of vids on cages? They need so much floor space. Nothing to do with what we're talking about. Bless you, Kerry Swan. And Mookie Puck just went out and came back in. And that's last week's show. I do apologise. Right, okay. Let's just see what the latest is so far as the news coming out of Westminster with regards Brexit and move on this conversation from there. According to Express, Brexit deal must be done this year. Labour rejects extension demands in shock statement. My word, Keir Starmer, who did everything he could to derail Brexit over the course of the last parliament, the most horrid parliament of my lifetime, that's for sure. Anyway, Labour Shadow Cabinet Minister Rachel Reeves said it was vital for the UK to secure a deal with the EU by the end of the year, appearing to rule her party out of supporting another EU extension. Michael Gove has stressed that regardless of the outcome of negotiations with the EU, the government is determined to leave the single market and customs union on the deadline. His shadow counterpart Rachel Reeves appeared to side with the Chancellor for the Duchy of Lancaster on the vital need for a Brexit deal to be delivered. This appeared to break with Sir Keir Starmer's, that's the Labour leader for you folks over in the States who don't know who he is, and all power to your elbow if you don't. This appeared to break with Sir Keir Starmer's previous demands for constant delays when he was shadow Brexit secretary under Corbyn's Labour leadership. Ms Reeves told the House of Commons it is vital that businesses and jobs are supported and that the oven-ready deal that the country was promised is delivered upon this year. Yet, frankly, many of us are worried about whether the oven was even turned on. That was what Boris famously soapboxed on during the last general election, that there was an oven-ready deal in the pipeline, which was a load of codswallop, was it not, Jon Roads? Given that the EU, they seem to have thought that that deal would constitute the UK surrendering their fishing grounds and sovereignty in terms of we can't trade with anybody else without the EU okaying it, i.e. a level playing field in a future agreement, which would jeopardise any other trade deals that the UK may care to strike, and so on and so forth. There was this not a blatant electioneering lie from Boris Johnson? And if so, how on earth can we trust him, frankly, about anything much at all?
I don't think it was a lie. I think Boris probably made the mistake of assuming that the EU would negotiate in good faith. It's clear that the EU are not trying to reach a deal. They're imposing ridiculous conditions, utterly unprecedented, as David Frost pointed out in a fantastic letter to them.
He's the Brexit negotiator for the UK. Go on, please. Go on.
So, I mean, you don't say, okay, well, I'll negotiate in good faith with you, but the conditions will be that I come round to your house, sleep with your wife, and sleep in your bed. You know, anyone would turn around and say, well, hang on, I'm not accepting those conditions. And they're now saying, oh, well, it's clear the UK is not going to play ball. I think Boris just spoke in good faith that the EU would, yes, sure, we will negotiate a good free trade deal to both parties' benefits. The EU had already previously offered Theresa May an FTA, a free trade arrangement, which she turned down for some bizarre reason. I don't know why she did that, but I think it's because she wanted to negotiate a much closer alignment with them. So I think the EU is just, they're not seriously negotiating with us. Now, it might be that they basically want
sovereign rights. They want to play it the way it has been for the last God knows how many decades, don't they? I mean, and from their point of view, also, they're trying to ensure that other members of the EU don't leave. And so it's kind of, the bottom line is that Boris said there was an oven-ready deal. That was a lie. He said that he would deliver Brexit in January when we're still in the CU, we're still in the single market, we're still under the jurisdiction of the ECJ. That was a lie. He has lied about two fundamental points. Therefore, how on earth can we trust this government, his government, to deliver on, well, frankly, anything? Because, I mean, this is the most important, setting aside, maybe one or two things that have gone on and crazy stuff going on now this year with, upending the economy off the back of this virus thing. This is the most fundamental issue of our generation, is it not? For the UK, our sovereignty. The government has just completely lied about it and got away with it, by the way, from the media that never questioned and said, hold on a sec, how is that Brexit? When at the end of January, he said we'd be out by the end of January, that we would have Brexit by the end of January. We don't need to talk about Brexit anymore. That was absolute codswallop. And yet the media gave him a pass. The media, we know, are globalist owned and controlled. Is there not some sort of a conspiracy here, basically not to give us Brexit? First of all, answer me this question, please. How on earth can we trust Boris? Do you not agree he lied during the election campaign?
I mean, a politician lies when their mouth moves, of course. I mean, this is, if you're expecting honesty from politicians, you're going to be looking very hard to find it. You're
saying that we're going to get Brexit, and yet you're basing that on the back of trusting people that you're now saying are liars.
I don't think Boris lied about the oven-ready deal. I think that was a statement made in good faith. And I think the EU has now attached...
Well, no. He didn't say he hoped. He didn't say he hoped. He said there was. And clearly, everything we have seen from the EU side since, and indeed the statements, as you correctly point out, for example, from David Frost, have said that what Boris said was absolute claptrap.
I think it's fair in diplomatic language to assume that the other party in a negotiation is going to negotiate with you in good faith. I'm sure that probably different things were said in private. But the thing that gives me some confidence is the fact that we haven't seen any evidence of backsliding in terms of actually what's happened. Now, I would agree that ideally 31st of January, we should have been out for good. No transition period. I don't like the transition period. None of us do. Mm-hmm. But up until the end of June, we could have extended that transition period. And all of the media, all of the EU, all of the opposition parties were united in saying we must extend the transition period. And the Tories didn't. They resisted all the way right past the deadline. There has been no word of extension of the transition. So it is now legally impossible for us to remain in this transition period longer than the end of this year without renegotiating the whole of the withdrawal bill, which I just can't see happening. It's also, it's not that we can just cancel Brexit and forget about it. We are technically, by legal force of treaty, we are now outside the EU. The EU is now an entity of 27 countries. And I see no evidence that after all of this past 4 years... But
that isn't Brexit, though, John. John, that isn't Brexit. That's just a different hat that we're wearing now. Because we are still in the customs union. We are still in the single market. We are still under the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. Those three things are the tenets of what Brexit constitutes, as laid down, for example, in that pamphlet by David Cameron when he was campaigning to keep us in the EU. He said that's what we would be leaving, those three things in that pamphlet, and so on and so forth. That's what Brexit is. We haven't got any of those things. Therefore, let's just be clear. we have not got Brexit yet. We are technically, yes, not members of the EU now, but we still are paying them money, and we are still subject to them and their rules and their regulations and their court. Therefore, we're actually in a worse position than we were before, when at least we had some political clout because we had some MEPs at the European Parliament. We don't even have that now. We should be coming out at the end of the year on the 31st of December 2020. We should be coming out. But again, I come back to my overall point here, which is that two things. First of all, we can't trust this government because they lied telling us that we've got Brexit when clearly we have not. And two, it does depend very, very much. And this actually is my biggest concern of all, is that if there is a turnaround in the White House and we lose a fundamental Anglophile, Donald Trump, there, if Biden is in place, no trade deal, that I suggest will be used against us by this government to say, oh, actually, you know what, we better, maybe have another transition deal, have another extension while we work out what we're going to do. In other words, kick the ball down the road, wear us down and keep us in.
I don't think that's going to happen. The thing is, we all agree that it would be better to have been out on the 31st of January, no transition deal. But we knew this was never going to be an easy process.
It would have been better to have gone out on the 29th of March,
well, yes.
2 years ago, which is when we were supposed to leave. And Theresa May, some say illegally, extended that deal with no parliamentary procedure, by the way. The government overturned the referendum and said, you know what, we're going to have an extension. And then subsequently, there's been another extension. How on earth can you feasibly trust this government that there isn't going to be yet another extension?
It's going to be a series of stages to get there. And this is the thing. We are now legally and technically out of the EU. We have now legally passed the threshold, the deadline for requesting another extension according to the withdrawal bill. So we've got
up to Parliament.
That's
up to Parliament. Parliament can change that. Parliament can change that.
It's an international treaty. It needs to be renegotiated with the EU as well.
And they would. So, they would extend on a heartbeat.
They would, but I suspect that they would. I don't think the government has any desire to open up that can of worms because the EU would want to start complicating matters again. Mm-hmm. The thing is, we've got 5.5 months to go of it. Now, by the time that the US election concludes, and allowing time for the fact that neither side is going to accept the result anyway, we're going to have about a month and a half by the time we know the US election result before the transition period ends. Biden is not even going to be in office at that stage. And I suspect that the US is going to have a lot more on its mind at that particular time than trade deals with anybody. I mean, given the state of the situation over there at the moment, it's going to be tearing itself apart, I suspect, in the wake of the election. It's really not looking a very good situation over there. So I think that by the time Biden gets around to thinking about the EU, we're going to be out. That is my belief. It might be that afterwards Biden turns around and says, "Well, no, we'll not do a trade deal with you unless you accept the EU's conditions." It might be that we've left the EU on WTO terms, and then they still hold out these ridiculous conditions as prerequisites for having a trade deal with them. So that to me, that is the danger that we need to be aware of. I'm not worried about us being kept in. I'm not worried about the transition period being extended at this point. I see no evidence of it happening. My worry is that Boris caves and accepts the level playing field or access to fisheries or something like that. That's my concern, and that's what I think we have to hold the government to account on.
Right, let's take a few comments and see what people have got to say. Yvonne Tierney, apparently Priti Patel, is putting that law through. I'm not sure what law she's referring to, but she should have had it prepared and ready to go. She was in France 3 days ago saying she is sending those back, those migrant crossings she's referring to here, that are being escorted by the French Navy halfway across the Channel and then being escorted the rest of the journey by the British Border Force, which is kind of intriguing, seeing as half of Britain is locked down or has been locked down with coronavirus. And a lot of these folks are testing positive for coronavirus as well. So she's sending those back that came in yesterday and today, Priti Patel is saying. So that makes a change, I suppose. I don't believe her, says Yvonne Tierney. Over 200 came in yesterday and more today. Nigel Farage has been doing a lot. Doing what the BBC doesn't do, and getting a camera out on a boat in the Channel and showing the handover from the French Navy to the British Border Force. It's just incredible, isn't it? Trump will be re-elected, Yvonne Tierney also points out. Yeah, maybe. But, you know, the thing is, the big question mark over this November election 2020 in the States, the presidential election, is the postal ballots. If the postal ballots thing goes through, there is so much manoeuvring possible with regards to voter fraud, as we've seen in the UK at places like Peterborough and Tower Hamlets. There is, a distinct possibility actually that Trump could lose through voter fraud, through dead people voting and all that sort of stuff.
And in one case, a dead cat.
Yeah, that's right. There was a story about a dead cat or something that was registered to vote. And all that. So anyway, she also says she wishes I would put a date on these shows. Does Yvonne Tierney? Maybe I should.
I can't actually see these comments, by the way. I'm stuck at a comment from you saying what a cock up.
Yes, John. Yes, it is a cock up. I don't know what happened with the embed on dailychaos.news /show today, but it's not streaming the right show there. But it is streaming the right show at youtube.com/dailychaos. And so you can check it out there and see the comments there. But I do apologise for that. Yvonne Tierney also says, Rachel Stevens is my local MP. Had a meeting with her 2 years ago. Did not end well. In the end, I said to her, I am washing my time, and walked out useless. What was that about, Yvonne? What was that about? Okay, right. Okay, fine. So, look, I would agree with you, John, that David Frost is talking tough. He is saying all the right things. I think that the problem I have with this government is that they're very, very good with the rhetoric. But the bottom line is that actually we haven't yet seen anything that is to do with Brexit. All that we have seen is that withdrawal agreement passed, which was unnecessary. What was the point of that? Which basically just handed over a load of cash to the EU when, for example, we've got veterans homeless sleeping on the streets throughout the UK. Why is there any excuse whatsoever for a British government off the back of that referendum to have gone any route except revoke the ECA from back in the early 70s, the thing that took us in to the European community, the EEC as was then, which has become the EU subsequently? Surely the only honourable thing for a government to have done off the back of that referendum where the British public said we want to leave would have been to say, yeah, fine, we'll just revoke that. And then go on WTO's, World Trade Organization rules, to be able to carve out trade agreements with whoever we want. And the EU, guess what? They need us as a trading partner more than the other way around. That is a fact. We have a trade deficit. The UK has a trade deficit with the EU countries. The UK is the EU's biggest trading partner. Full stop. would it not have made sense to have basically ripped all that up and said, put some sort of emergency measures in place to say that we're happy to carry on trading with the EU on a tariff-free basis until we sort out a trade agreement, deadline of, 2 years down the road or something like that, very generous. Then it's up to them. Instead of, we're in this situation where it seems to me, the British government is basically playing politics, trying to kick this thing down the road until there's a change of presidency. A globalist in the White House, and then it's far, far more difficult for us to get some sort of an amenable agreement with the EU.
I don't think that's the case. I mean, I'm like you. I think we should have been out by lunchtime on the 24th of June 2016. Rip it up the next morning. Should have been done. But this is the Tories. You're never going to get that. They've been playing both sides. We wasted all of that time with Theresa May, but she's gone. Boris has been elected on with the largest majority the Tories have had in decades on a 3-word manifesto to get Brexit done. Now, I agree that this is not Brexit, but he knows that he can't just reverse his position and keep that majority. There's no chance. It's electoral suicide. Now, I don't see there's any indication that they're waiting for the US election to do an about face. For the simple reason is that it would have been so much easier to do it before the end of June. It would, if there was any intention to do that, they could have said, look, coronavirus has set us back. Let's extend for 6 months. And they could have done that anywhere in the first half of the year, and they didn't. And that, more than anything to me, says that they're not going to go back on their word. Coronavirus was the perfect opportunity to get an extension to the transition period, to kick the can further down the road. It's the perfect excuse. It's unprecedented. It's come out of nowhere. It's totaled the entire
Well, that may
economy.
well happen yet. That may well happen yet. With a second wave of coronavirus, they might try to use that. But the fact is that coronavirus is irrelevant to this relationship with the EU and to the economics of the thing. In fact, if anything, coronavirus, which gives the EU such a big kick in the goolies economically, is another reason for us to leave. So I don't really see that can be used particularly as an argument to stay.
Coronavirus definitely strengthens the case for Brexit. There's no doubt about it. Committed Remainers, who I know, have been convinced that we were right to get out by coronavirus, because everybody sees that if we remain in, we're going to have to pay the coronavirus bill for the southern European states. So it was, coronavirus definitely strengthens the case for Brexit. But if you look at the way the mainstream media played it, it was, well, coronavirus has happened, now we must extend. Coronavirus has delayed everything, we've got to have the extension for this reason.
That's right.
All the Remainer parties jumped on it. It would have been the perfect opportunity for the Tories, if they had any intention of kicking the can down the road, to do it then, and do it before the deadline. Why ride out the whole of the coronavirus up to now? Why let the deadline elapse and then try and do it a month and a half before the end of the transition period in a hurry as a result of a foreign election? I don't see that's a plausible risk. I think there's things to be worried about, and I think there's
it's the fact that can be used, isn't it? It's the fact that can be used. When Barack Obama said, I'll put the UK at the back of the trade queue, it didn't go down very well in the UK. It has to be said. The British public didn't like hearing that interference. What the mainstream, if it was Trump that was saying that sort of thing or whatever, they would talk about Russians and all that sort of stuff. But nonetheless, he did say that. And the fact is that US trade deal is a big cushion for the UK, is it not? To have that. And it does diminish the case, whether we like it or not, for Brexit, from the point of view, at least, of perception. If we cannot
a good
get
US
a
trade
US
deal
trade
would
deal.
boost our case. But I don't think that the absence of a good US trade deal scuppers the case completely.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. But there is a big perception issue. I mean, you mentioned the fake stream media using coronavirus as a political tool to try and prize another extension with the EU. They would do that in spades if Joe Biden, on his first day as elected president, and I believe it would be within his first week, would turn around to the UK and say, you should stay in the EU and we're not giving you a trade deal.
I can't see that happening. It just seems far too implausible. And for a start, we can't. What
bit? Him getting in or him saying that? Because he would say that. He would say that.
Both. Quite honestly, I think this. I'm certainly hopeful, but I think this is going to be a moot point. I think Trump has probably got it. But
I hope so. I hope so. And you would think, with everything that we have seen, that he should have done. But what we do know, what we have seen from stateside politics over the course of this term of this president is Mueller. All lies. 3.5 years we were told about Russians, Orange Man, bad. And it turns out that actually it's Biden who had dodgy dealings with his son Hunter in Ukraine. And now with China. The MSM not talking about it. Not talking about any of that. Oh, no. Orange Man, bad. So Mueller was a pack of lies. Then we saw a political impeachment. It was so clearly politicized based on what? What was he actually impeached for? Let me finish this train of thought. We've seen all of this rhetoric. Every news story about Donald Trump is bad. They never talk about the fact, for example, that he has honored most, if not all, of his election pledges to the United States. He did very, very well on jobs until coronavirus came along. Very well indeed. He did start building the wall that he promised and what have you. He did claw back dodgy trade agreements such as NAFTA and with China, for example, and has created, as a result, huge number of jobs in the States. So he has, but we don't see any of that. Human trafficking. He's done more to curb human trafficking than any other president, I think, in my lifetime. A huge amount. We don't hear a word about that. If you just tuning into this show, you've never seen this show before, or similar shows, you probably have never heard about any of that either. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about. It's just incredible. What we have seen is a globalist establishment hell-bent on getting rid of Donald Trump, because the fact is that this guy doesn't suit their requirements. He hasn't started any wars. No wars from this guy. Where's the praise for that? They would rather have him. They would rather have. Yeah, exactly. He put out a peace branch to North Korea to try and basically stop some sort of a nuclear worry there and what have you. And again, he was smeared for doing that. At least he's trying. It seems. I don't know. I don't entirely trust Trump. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't entirely trust him. But it does seem to me that the difference between Trump and Biden and all of the Democrat lot is that they are proven to want war. Libya, they destroyed it in the last presidency. The savior Obama, for example, and this president at least is not proven foul. And so I would give him the benefit of the doubt from that. And also he's been honest about exposing the media for being as fake as they are.
The first one to go after the media properly, which has been fantastic.
If they are capable of all of those things in the first term of this US president, if they are capable of using this coronavirus outbreak to try and destabilize the presidency, which clearly they have done, if they are capable of taking this BLM, Black Lives Matter, stroke Antifa, which is a bloody dangerous organization, if they're capable of basically using them, pretty much encouraging people to riot and loot, for example, to what appears to be a case of trying to destabilize this presidency, is it not just possible, feasible, that they might use mail-in ballots as a way to steal the election and put their man, their globalist, in the White House. No?
I think it's very, very possible. The thing is, there's going to be electoral fraud. They're not going to be able to do a conventional election because of the lockdown. The Democrats are clearly using the lockdown to keep their candidate out of debates where they know he's going to perform badly. They can
That's right,
keep him
because
from
he's got
public
dementia.
speaking where he makes gaffes. It's,
Yep.
I mean, coronavirus has played entirely into their hands. It's saved them. I mean, can you imagine what the campaign season would have been like with Sleepy Joe trying to take Donald Trump on in debates? It would have been laughable, and we would have.
Well, I'm
laughed.
looking forward to seeing it, but now
hoping we
we're
certainly get
seeing
to.
we're seeing the New York Times, for example, is campaigning for there to be no presidential debates.
Yeah.
And clearly we know why, because the guy that they're putting up for the Democrats isn't capable of doing the job. He shouldn't be
Biden
going to
was
the
your
White House. He
candidate,
should be
wouldn't
going
you wanna
to a
keep him locked in the
residential
basement?
home.
It's the thing. If Biden was your candidate, you'd run to keep him locked in the basement too. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's right. But the fact is that he shouldn't be running for the highest office, not only in the United States, but on the entire planet. He shouldn't
He should be
running.
spending time with his family. He's served his country either well or badly, depending on your point of view. But the guy,
John,
is
it's another pin in my cap here. Yeah, the fact is that they're putting this guy up. God knows who actually is really going to be running the country behind the scenes, because he will not be capable. He can't even construct a sentence. Therefore, is it not feasible that they will steal that election? And then in terms of Brexit, we got a problem, Houston.
Maybe. I mean, I don't think either side is going to accept the election. I mean, Trump won fair and square in 2016, and the Democrats still haven't really accepted it at all. They were determined to do everything to render it illegitimate. At the same time, we know there's going to be fraud. So whichever side wins, the other side isn't going to accept it at all. I think they're absolutely going to steal it. Now, I don't know enough about how the American political system works. I believe there's a certain number of ballots that are ruled inadmissible or something. It has to go to Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court will probably side with Trump. He's had 4 years to get a couple of his guys in there. So I think it may well be that there's sufficient fraud that it renders the election in doubt, and it passes it on to SCOTUS, and SCOTUS keeps Trump in. So it could even work in our favor in that sense. What we really need is an American constitutional expert. Let us know. So if you see anyone in the comments who is. But I don't think that even if Biden gets it, I think there's going to be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a month of confusion following the election, where each side claims victory and each side levels ridiculous charges at the other. You're going to have Antifa and BLM and the rest of the Maoists rioting in the streets. You're going to have violence. You'll have the National Guard called up. America is plunging headfirst into the second civil war, I think, at this point. And I think that the troubles of Little Britain and the EU on the other side of the Atlantic are going to be far from their minds. Now, it might be that...
but no. Far from the minds of the American public, but not far from the minds of the globalists. And whoever is put in under a democratic presidency is a puppet to the globalists. Somebody like Soros or whatever the Rothschilds will be saying, no way are you going to be backing Brexit by encouraging them, by assisting them with the US trade deal. You should be telling them to get back in lockstep with the EU. And that will be their position. That will be their position, irrespective of the American public. These people don't give a stuff about the American public. Look, let me just read a comment. Let me just read a comment from Yvonne Tierney. Ollie watched a video today from a woman who is a Republican. She went to vote, and when in the booth, it would not let her vote for Trump. She complained to someone, and he said, "You are down as a Democrat." She said, "I am not." So he said, "You can only vote Democrat." She has had to fill in forms to have it changed fraud. The fact is that we ain't seen nothing yet. They will do everything. It is clear now. Anybody that's been following events in the United States, seeing, for example, what's happened to Seattle, which is just the downtown Seattle has been taken over by insurgents backed by the mayor, backed by Dunkin' Donuts.
It's a summer of love. That's what I heard.
This is we have in the United States now a situation where the Democratic states or the Democrat-leaning states, any state where there is some vestige of Democrat support, large chunk, they are, and indeed where Republicans, never mind the Democrats, where Republicans are supporting Biden. Look at the Bush family yet again vowing to support Biden over Trump. I mean, Trump, it seems to me, he's an independent mind. He's not really a Republican, especially. He once said
not in the traditional sense, no.
Runners either. But is that not the beauty of this guy from the point of view of democracy? Is that he is not into this, if you like, duopolistic politics, where at the end of the day they're corrupt on both sides, and that is the hope. But from the point of view of party politics, where they are bought and love the back pocket stuff, that's a problem for him, is it not? And they will do, at this juncture, everything in their power to keep him out. And I agree with you. I think that we are looking civil war in the face in the United States, at least, a year from now. I really, really do wonder if, given whatever the outcome of the election, I really, really do wonder if we're going to see civil war. If the Democrats win, the Republicans will say that was fraud, and probably right. And if the Republicans win, the Democrats, the hardcore Democrats, or rather the globalists behind the Democrats, will say, right, let's cause utter insurrection because we cannot afford another Trump term. But leaving that aside, which is another entirely different show, that does leave Brexit in peril. Look, we've covered this. I hear what you say. I think you're very optimistic about the outcome, John. Bless you, mate. But I hope beyond hope that you are right and that this government is true. Finally, having lied to us about the reality of the EU and our relationship with it for decades. But I do hope you're right nonetheless. Let's just move on briefly to what the British public would or would not do if there is another extension. Because we're very, very good at queuing the British public. Yeah. Are we just going to continue to put up with it, do you think?
Well, now this is a tricky position. Our hands are tied because there is nobody else except for the Conservatives. UKIP has basically exploded at this point. UKIP are a dead duck. We need what I think we need to do for Brexit and for a whole host of policy reasons on all sorts of aspects of the culture war. The right and the nationalist side, the civic nationalist side, need to unite behind the party of the right. Because UKIP got us the referendum. UKIP got us Brexit. 25 years of campaigning, and they did it without ever winning an election. Aside from European or council things, without ever winning a national election, and they did it by poaching votes away from the right wing of the Tory voter base, and eventually forcing the Tories to have to start placating that side of their voter base in order to not lose to Labour. And you could see that was virtually what happened. Cameron just about managed to stitch it together with a coalition with the Lib Dems. And finally, he offered the referendum. And all of those people voted. I'd been a UKIP supporter for a good few years. And when Cameron offered the referendum, I switched back to the Tories. I voted for David Cameron to get that referendum. when the Tories took over from the coalition as the sole party in charge. We need to recreate that success that UKIP had with a party on the right. I don't think UKIP is the party anymore. UKIP has done its job. Godspeed and thank you, but they're no longer a going concern, and I think we need to do that. But
the thing is, though, John, all of that is what 4 years down the road, the next general election. So, I mean, for example, if Nigel Farage was to set up this reform party that he's been talking about, which is the successor to the Brexit party, which swept up at the EU election, a year or so ago, and absolutely destroyed the Tories, which is the main reason, possibly, certainly the main reason that we got that general election, that we got a change of leadership with from Theresa May to Boris Johnson, and finally got a Brexiteer at the helm, apparently at the helm of the Tory party. But that all of that is 4 years down the road until the Brexit party could possibly make an impact at the polls. I mean, it could do something with local elections in the meantime, and the odd by-election possibly. But big, kind of changes. I mean, that would be nearly 10 years since the referendum. So I don't know. I mean, I agree with you that UKIP. We've got Alan Elder Brown popping on tomorrow, by the way, to talk about UKIP and where it is or isn't now, or maybe, and talking about corruption with the NEC and goodness knows what. But I mean, that's all way down the road, isn't it? What we really, really need is to see the British public get a backbone, and to say, we've had enough. We said we want it out. Where is it?
I think if anything stops us from being out at the end of the year, I think you will see that.
Really?
The thing is, at the moment, Boris has only been Prime Minister for a short time. And he campaigned with Cummings, who we know is a proper leaver. He won his election on the back of, as I say, a 3-word manifesto to get Brexit done. He's not had the power in the
but he said that was a lie. He said he was going to get it done in January, and he didn't. He took us out of the EU. It's not the same. He lied.
It's not the same. I will agree, but I can wait 5.5 months. I mean, let's clear it up. There's no way
you're pragmatic.
The EU.
You're pragmatic to the point of great trust. Great trust. Sir.
Like I said, I see no evidence from this government at the moment this year of them doing anything to undermine the position they've got into. That's my point. They could have extended, they didn't. They could have accepted the EU's preconditions for a trade deal. They haven't. Well, they haven't yet. And that's the thing. I'm not worried about any risk that we'll apply to rejoin the EU as a full member state. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm worried that the British government will accept the EU's ridiculous conditions and will get tied into some fake Brino. But the thing is, a future government can renegotiate that. Now, we've got to make sure it doesn't happen. Now, how we do that, we have to get out, we have to campaign, we have to make our voice heard out there. We have to know that we've not forgotten this issue, even if they're hoping we have. But I mean, quite honestly, I think if Biden wins, and we're going to have bigger problems anyway, to be honest. I think if Biden wins...
You mentioned Dominic Cummings, and Charlotte Jameson in the comments, for example, has said, that comment's gone. But basically, she said that her trust is mainly in Dominic Cummings, who is Boris Johnson's chief advisor, for any of you folks in the States, for example, that aren't sure about that. Now, he has had, Cummings and Boris has said, he has problems with the civil service, which has been massively politicized and was clearly extremely pro-Remain in the EU throughout the entire campaigning to stay in, and subsequently we know that Theresa May, for example, sent civil servant Olly Robbins, to Brussels to negotiate for the UK. a guy who wanted us to stay. It goes to show, I mean, I tell you that Theresa May, she was a shocker. Anyway,
Well,
but
if it
but
wasn't for
since
Blair,
then,
she'd be the
since
worst
then, John,
Prime Minister ever.
since then, we have seen one or two moves on the civil service to try and reform it. Not least, its head, Sedwell, has been toppled, kicked out, given a big payoff to basically get him to leave, so that we could maybe, genuinely have some reform in the civil service. That, I had to say, that is a good sign, no?
That's very encouraging. Yeah. I mean, I think I've got a lot of trust in Dominic Cummings, and I like David Frost. I mean, he's no Olly Robbins.
Very much.
Yeah. I thought his letter of a few weeks ago, about a month ago, he sent this fantastic 3-page letter.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely rubbishing the EU's preconditions for a trade deal, this level playing field, pointing out quite correctly, these are totally unprecedented. These have never been specified as any condition for a trade deal by any country to any other country. And no sovereign country would ever be expected to agree to such ridiculous conditions. There's no doubt about it. So I don't trust Boris particularly, but I trust the people around him. I trust Priti Patel, who's Home Secretary, of course. And she was the only one to not accept any version of Theresa May's deal in any of those 3 meetings. She stayed very firm all the way throughout. He's surrounded himself with pretty good people, by and large, in the cabinet. All the key people are Brexiteers. He's propped up on a huge majority purely on the strength of the Brexit issue. Let's be real. I mean, Corbyn helped a bit by being so fundamentally unelectable, but it's Brexit that won that referendum for the Tories, and they know it. And they know that the Red Wall is not going to be fobbed off with a couple of building projects in HS2. They've got to deliver on this, and they know that the lesson of Theresa May is clear for any Tory MP to see. I mean, she tried her best to tie us into the closest possible Brino that she could get, and it didn't get through. And it didn't get through because of the ERG. The ERG are now the ones who are holding the reins of power in the Tory party.
The ERG, that's the European Research Group, which is a Eurosceptic group within the Conservative Party, no?
They are the ones that are holding the reins of power in the Tory party.
Are
They're
they?
propped up
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they are.
I think
now.
they are. I think they are. Between all of the key people, if you look at all of the key people in the party, Home Secretary, Chancellor of the Exchequer, all of them down, they're all Remainers. They're all Leavers. They're all people who campaigned hopefully. The Remainers are out on their ear. We kind of won the battle for the Tory party then.
It looks like it. It does look like it. I would agree with that on the face of it. But nonetheless, we've still got a little way to go, no?
I certainly wouldn't be complacent.
The civil service moves, the move on the civil service is good news. I do agree with you. I absolutely agree with you that David Frost, the Brexit negotiator, is fantastic. In my opinion, he hasn't put a foot wrong.
No, he's been spectacular.
He has exposed Barnier's demands for just being totally unreasonable, as opposed to Olly Robbins would have said, "Oh, well, Barnier's probably right, and we should just go along with it." And well, where's my checkbook? That kind of stuff. Let me just read a story. I want to ask you what you think about, quite aside from Brexit, about the EU's survivability is now, given news such as that we're seeing here. Again, this is from Express, which tends to cover Brexit more than any other rag. Eurosceptic secures Polish presidential election victory. And it's bad news for Brussels. Poland has re-elected Brussels-bashing Andrzej Duda as its president after a close-fought contest, the National Election Commission today announced. This is good news, people. Mr. Duda, an ally of the country's ruling nationalist government, is expected to help the Law and Justice Party continue its controversial judicial reforms, which have been heavily criticised by the European Union. With almost all of the ballots counted, the winner had secured 51.2% of all votes, while his Liberal challenger trailed with 48.8%. Turnout for the second round of the vote was 68.1%. Both men declared victory when the exit poll was released as the ballot closed on Sunday evening. Law and Justice's Deputy Prime Minister questioned the exit poll, claiming voters were ashamed of voting for right-wing parties. But look, the bottom line is it looks as though they have won. This is a party that is very Eurosceptic, which is quite ironic considering the billions that the EU has been pouring in to try and bribe Poland over the last few years. Tens of billions they've been pouring into that economy. But I'm just wondering, my question to you, John, is given what we're seeing in places like Poland, in places like in Germany, actually, in places like Austria, clearly in Italy, is it not the end of the road for the EU, irrespective, or is Norman Lamont, former Chancellor of the Exchequer, last week he reckoned that the EU will just continue trundling on, treading water for decades, and that they can do that irrespective?
I think they will continue in some form for quite a long time, but they're a spent force now. I mean, it's good on the Poles is all I can say. I mean, they suffered under the Nazis and then they suffered under the Soviet Union, so they've got a healthy appreciation for liberty and freedom and a healthy skepticism of belonging to totalitarian supranational blocs. I mean, we're seeing this all over.
I think, in fairness, the Polish also killed quite a few Germans. I just want to point that out. But yeah, no, they did suffer as well. No question about it.
Well, they suffered and fought back, and they fought back against the Soviets. Yeah, I mean, I think the EU is fundamentally doomed. It's an unworkable model. I can well imagine that countries drop out bit by bit over the next decade or two. Eventually, I think it's going to wind up just being sort of Germany and France in some kind of trading arrangement, and finding that they're the ones footing the bill for a whole load of other nations piggybacking on them. Mm-hmm. You know, sooner or later, it's going. You know, the fundamental contradictions inherent in the project are going to tear it apart. Mm-hmm. I could well see that Italy is going to have a reason to leave. I think France and Germany will probably stay in till the bitter ends, though. I mean, we're seeing the AfD come to, more and more popular in Germany. Their opposition parties are finding it harder and harder to keep a coalition together that keeps the AfD out of power.
Yeah,
I mean, that's Macron. Right. Yeah, they're really struggling to do this. I mean, what was it? It was a couple of months back that the AfD won a local election and then or helped a right-wing candidate get elected, and the candidate had to step down because of it. The desperation is showing. I mean, Macron's not done well.
I would say you're right. You mentioned Macron as well, and you're right. I mean, it goes beyond the fringes of Europe, the Hungaries, and maybe a large chunk of Greece. Apart from the corrupt politicians that unfortunately run the place, it goes beyond the fringes now, and actually, it's right at the heart of Europe. This Euroscepticism,
right at the heart.
If there was,
let's not forget that Macron's current presidency is the one with the yellow vest protests.
Yeah,
I mean that is still within Macron's current presidency, current term. I think Le Pen's got it next time.
I would have thought so. I would have thought so.
Hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm going to leave the show on a completely different note. We've talked about our swamp in the UK, and the civil service was a big chunk of that swamp, or still is. Let's have a quick look at this story in the Telegraph about the swamp in the States, and maybe you'd care to comment on this, John. You'd be very welcome. Ghislaine Maxwell, Jizzy Maxwell, wrapped phone in tin foil, say prosecutors, as they reveal the heiress's attempts to escape the FBI. She's appearing in court, televised tomorrow, better than Wimbledon. There should be no question that the defendant is skilled at living in hiding, authorities warn, in attempt to deny Maxwell bail. Apparently, she is the captain of a submarine or something. She's got a license to drive submarines about, and she's been holed up in a submarine, I've been hearing. Anyway, Jizzy Maxwell, the ex-girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, is extremely skilled at living in hiding and could flee abroad and live comfortably for the rest of her life if granted bail by the courts. US authorities have warned ahead of a bail hearing on tomorrow. Prosecutors revealed that FBI officers discovered that Ms. Maxwell had wrapped her mobile phone in tin foil in a seemingly misguided effort to evade detection, and hired former British soldiers to guard her hideout in New Hampshire, where she was arrested earlier this month. In the document submitted today to a Manhattan judge opposing Ms. Maxwell's application for bail, the prosecutors argued that the British heiress is an extreme flight risk and would attempt to leave the US if allowed out of prison. They revealed that she has access to $20 million, including $2 million in banks in the UK, and was transferring money between Swiss bank accounts as recently as last year. They submitted that Ms. Maxwell, 58, who is facing 35 years in prison on charges that she recruited teenage girls for Epstein to sexually abuse in the 1990s, had tried to escape during her arrest and was found hiding in a room by FBI agents. A British security guard working for Ms. Maxwell is said to have told the FBI that she had not left the property during his time working there, and that he was sent out to make purchases for the property using a credit card. There should be no question that the defendant is skilled at living in hiding, the prosecutors wrote in a submission to the US District Court for the Southern District of New York on Monday. Investigators also allege that Ms. Maxwell has refused to declare her financial situation, and they have been unable to determine whether she has had a job in more than 30 years. They rejected Ms. Maxwell's $5 million bail proposal, claiming that offering a $3.75 million home in London as collateral was meaningless, as it could not be seized by US authorities. They also argue that the co-signatories, believed to be her twin sisters and other close relatives, have not been formally identified to them, and it was not clear if they are living in the US. They also expressed concern that she may escape to France, where she holds citizenship. Paris does not extradite its own citizens. In their request for bail submitted to the court on Friday, Ms. Maxwell's lawyers had claimed that their client could be trusted and had never run from the law. They said she had not been hiding out at the property in New Hampshire, which she purchased in cash through a limited company, but was simply escaping the media's glare. They argued that she has been made a scapegoat after Epstein killed himself in a Manhattan prison last August. Ghislaine Maxwell, they wrote, is not Jeffrey Epstein. Ms. Maxwell's legal team said that she was willing to subject herself to home confinement with electronic monitoring and relinquish her 3 passports. At least one of the alleged victims identified in the indictment against Ms. Maxwell is planning to tell Tuesday's hearing that his partner in crime and longtime associate should be denied bail. Attorneys from Cohen and Gresser law firm have appealed that Ms. Maxwell would be at risk of catching COVID-19 if she remained at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, claiming that the coronavirus is an unprecedented and extraordinary dangerous threat that justifies release on bail. And doubtless the Clintons are sending her COVID-19 covered chocolate cakes right now. However, it doesn't say that. However, the Southern... Okay, fine. Right, John, I'll tell you, it's awfully exciting, isn't it? I mean, it beats EastEnders. It's better than Dynasty. What is your take on this? Are we about to see huge revelations and big names fall? Or just out of interest, do you think that Ghislaine Maxwell is about to be, I don't know, Arkancided or suicided or something, end up with a bit of an accident, and that we're just back to square one, and we're never going to get to the bottom of just how corrupt and how deep is this deep state?
Well, I would have said that if she suddenly mysteriously were to commit suicide or get hit by a bolt of lightning or act of God or anything like that, it would be just so blatant. But then the way that Epstein himself died was just so blatant that who knows, you can't put anything past these people.
No.
The big worry is that she's, I don't know, maybe take some kind of a deal from dodgy Democrats to say, well, how would like house arrest sound, or how we can ensure you have an easier time. Finger Trump. That would be a big problem. If dodgy Democrats get to her and say, yeah, sure, blame it all on Trump. Trump say he was the one on the Lolita Express, Epstein's private jet, and all of this. I think that's a worry. But quite honestly, I hope.
Well, apparently he was on it one time. Apparently Trump.
One time,
yeah. No,
unlike
apparently
Bill
so.
Clinton, who seemed to rack up quite the frequent
26
flyer
times.
miles.
Bill Clinton. Yeah, I'm not saying that either of them should have been on it at all. I don't know. But let me just say one thing, which is very, very curious. Been covering this with Chris Boozy, stateside stringer for Daily Chaos, who has been explaining to me that the prosecutor, the chief prosecutor in the Southern District of New York Judicial Zone, was not cooperating with this administration in the States to bring Maxwell in for arrest and trial. And eventually they got rid of him. Barr basically said, you've resigned. And he said, no, I haven't. He said, yes, you have. And he said, no, I haven't. And so Trump said, all right, you're sacked. And so anyway, there's this new prosecutor comes in, and within 11 days, FBI raid Maxwell's place in New Hampshire, and she's now looking at a bit of porridge.
Well, that to me sounds like Trump doesn't have any guilty conscience about anything at all.
That's right,
yeah,
exactly. I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed she lives to tell her tale, and a very interesting tale I think it's going to be. If she can take down a number of the swampies in the American deep state, that would be quite the story coming out. So I'm certainly going to watch with interest. I, to be honest, never thought we'd quite get this far with it. So who knows what's going to happen? It's exciting.
Yeah, John, absolutely.